go, it's Guido coming at you with a tank review. Haven't done one of these in a while, but we have several new tanks actually. The Tiger Mouse, the 7.52 thing, and this one, the Type-63. There's something else in there. Oh, the XM66 ABC123 TD. But we're going to start with the Japanese premium because this is the first tank in the new line of Japanese tanks that has a gun cooling system. Which essentially what the gun cooling system does is you wait a little longer and you have a much more accurate gun. That's it. You don't have to press X. There's nothing else really going on. It's actually kind of hard to know when it happens, other than you'll see the dispersion circle close in a little bit. We'll discuss that as we go, but this is a new mechanic that's coming with the new line. And as Wargaming usually does, they've released a Tier 8 Premium first, and it happens to be this, the Type-63. It's unfortunate that more than likely the Tier 8 Tech Tree tank is going to be inferior to this. We'll have to see what happens when it comes out, but this is what we have now in the Christmas boxes for 2024 holiday ops. As you can see, it's a center mounted turret. It has an oscillating turret as well. If you look, there's actually a space in between the gun right here and the bottom of the hole, or the top of the hole. You can see through. And so the oscillating turret, the problem with an oscillating turret is its lookup is horrible. You can see that it's got this great big counterweight in the back. So whenever you try to elevate the gun, this thing gets in the way and it hits the back of the tank. So I think it's 10 degrees. We'll take a look. It might even be a little less than that. It's not much. And that can be very tricky in some certain situations where you need look up, especially if something's higher in altitude than you right there. So I've actually enjoyed this tank quite a bit. We'll talk about my setup. We'll talk about how I've done. Look at a comparison amongst some of the other tanks out there that are, I'm not going to necessarily say they're similar, but we'll try to make them similar, I guess, in the discussion, if you know what I mean. There's nothing else that has a cooling gun, and we're not going to compare it to autoloaders or auto reloaders, for example. All right, vehicle details. We have a Type-63 independent development by Mitsubishi to improve firepower and armor, maintaining high mobility. It is fairly mobile. Designed with an oscillating turret, central armament compartment at the rear, which autoloader was located. Work on the project was discontinued at the stage of configurational concepts and turret patents. There was a time, and there's no actual year in here, where a lot of different countries were looking at oscillating turrets. The French actually implemented some of them. You had the Swedes were looking at them. So even the Americans were looking at them. I guess the Japanese obviously were as well. Only a few got developed. For example, the 1375-90 series as an example of an oscillating turret that actually got developed and fielded. So that's what this thing is, a napkin tank based off of plans. Let's take a quick look at at a comparison. So I picked three other tanks. I picked the Lurva because the Lurva is an old standby, good premium tank with decent pen, can make you some cash, and is kind of a good all-rounder with an okay turret. That's how I feel the Type-63 is. The K2 is a more armored tank with the same general idea of a decent tank that can make you some good credits. Worse pen with the K2, a bit more armor. The T832 is a fairly recently released premium tank that has a really good turret and a lot of firepower and accuracy. And honestly, the Type-63 to me feels a bit like a combo of the Lurva and the 832 out there. Maybe at times more accurate than the Lurva, more mobile, and less accurate than T832, and obviously not as much armor as a K2. So real quick, looking at the comparison with these, you're talking about an average alpha or an alpha of 320, which is in line with all these minus the K2 at 390. The average pen, or the pen with the standard round, is 230, and it's 290 with a heat round. So it is running a heat round. Gets you a little bit more of a boost on the pen usually with the heat rounds, but unfortunately you're dealing with heat round stuff like being eaten by tracks and concrete pillars and things like that. Rate of fire is in line with most of these. The K2 lags a little bit behind because it's got a much longer reload. You can see 10.7 on the Type-63, a little faster than the Lurva and right in line with the 832. Sliding down gun traverse is decent. Here's the there's another mechanic I forgot about. It does have hydraulics. This is a little bit tricky, and hopefully I can show this to you in a couple of the replays. When you get to the point where you're using it, sometimes you get a little reticle jump as it kind of engages, especially on ridges. can be a little bit tricky to use, but you will get up to -12, whereas the Lurva and the 832 are -10, and there's a lot less on the K2. Aiming time is nice, guys. So when you let the gun cool with a nice aiming time, and you're looking at a .27 accuracy plus your bonuses for Brothers in Arms and IA if you're going to use that, food, that kind of stuff, we can get quite accurate with the gun when it's cooled, and it's very comfortable when it's cooled down. It's actually no slouch at .36 when it's not cooled. We're talking about an 832 with .32 that is a really accurate gun when you get all the bonuses going. Drop that another .5. That's pretty good. .05, I suppose, is really what it is. That gives us a DPM standard here, and again, these are 100% tanks, 100% cruise without any equipment, of 1794, which is approaching the 1821 of the 832. Not bad at all. For the cooling system, the way this thing works, if you wait for the reload at 10.7 seconds, then you've got a .36 accuracy. So if you're in a situation where you shoot, and as soon as you reload, you shoot, it won't cool. Okay? So you will be running with a .36 accuracy. Generally, that's in close in, where accuracy isn't quite as important and .36 is workable, especially with your bonuses. Howsoever, if you wait 13.5 seconds, now that's not after the reload, that's total, okay? So it's concurrent. Your gun is cooling during your 10.7 reload, but if you wait to 13.56, roughly 14 seconds, or about 3 seconds more, all right, then you'll notice that your distribution or your reticle will crump in just a little bit, and now you've got the more accurate gun. That's about the only way you know that I've seen anyway. I've looked at the HUD. I don't think there's any indication other than you see the reticle crimp down. There's no timer that I can see out there or anything like that. All right. Armor-wise, it absolutely lags, especially in terms of the hull with the guys that I am comparing it to. I didn't really compare it to some of the more paper tanks because I don't feel like it necessarily is. It's a pretty decent hull-down tank, but you want to stay away from people shooting your hull. It's well-angled, but it's very thin for a heavy. The turret, likewise, is sitting at 175. Now look at the Lurva at 120. Quite a rounded hull, though, so it works out. This thing is angled. We'll take a look at it in a minute. Pretty angled, but the problem with it, if you look at the shape, is if you turn your head, turn your turret a little bit, it will flat plate that kind of angled part in the front, and then it's extremely easy to pin because you're only running 175 total thickness. Then most people at tier 8 are penning, especially heavies, what, 203 and above. And if they're dabbing 2, then quite a bit more. So a bit tricky to use, but generally as long as you're straight on or hold down, I would not call it reliable, but it's useful. Let's leave it at that. It becomes useful. Hit points is a bit of a bummer because it's lower than everything here. We're at 1,400, so you're giving up some pretty significant hit points. I mean, a K2 has 250 more. That's almost an additional shot. It's certainly an additional shot from a medium and almost an additional shot from a heavy that you can't take in the Type-63. So it doesn't take as much punishment as these other guys do. But like I said, we'll look at it. My armor use is actually pretty good based on the turret being a decent shape for the game, the way it's played, hold down. We get into the mobility. It zings along at 40. It's the fastest of these four. 15 backwards, pretty much even with most of these guys, although the K2 is really slow backwards at 12. You throw a turbo on it, and it will zip around pretty good as well. We'll talk about equipment choices in a minute. Camo, whatever, it's a heavy, who cares. 393 view range is a little low, way better than the K2. Not quite as good as the Lurva and the T832, but usable for tier 8. All right, so there's a quick comparison. What would I call it? I don't know. It's not necessarily comparable to any of those directly, but I feel like it's in between a low and a T832, to be honest. So a little bit faster than the Lurva, not quite as good armor on the turrets. The situational armor on the turret is kind of like the Lurva, though. If you use it right, it's decent armor. The only bummer is that side scraping and the things that the Lurva might get away with its thicker frontal armor, you rarely get away with in the Type-63. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a sniper or a second line guy. It certainly can do well there, especially if you're able to wait for the gun to get cooled. I think it really can do some upfront stuff, but it's not necessarily a pure brawling breakthrough heavy. It's a little bit in between that breakthrough brawling heavy and a sniper. All right. there's the shape of it. As I said, you can see the turret. As I mentioned, it's this angle I'm discussing right here, that if you're straight on, it's pretty well angled, but if you turn your turret at all, then it flat plates it, and it's very easy to penetrate it. If you're shooting at long range, trying to hit a weak spot on this thing and thinking a lot of tanks have a little bit of a weak spot underneath the, right under the mantlet, realize that's an open spot. Now, I don't know what the options are here potentially of shooting into that from angles. Maybe. I don't know what that top piece is there, but you can actually get into there. And there might be some ricochet situations in there as well that could be painful for the Type-63. All right. How did I do with this thing? I ended up with a 60% win rate. I had 1,098 experience. Come over here, we can see that 72% hits, which was decent. I've survived 50% of the battles. That speaks to a 60% win rate. Damage ratio 1.45, destruction 2.1, and armor use at 0.37. So we're not reaching the 0.5 where you might look at it and go, ooh, that's pretty situational. That's pretty good turret armor. It's close, but no cigar. So that's like I said, it's okay turret armor. It will be, it's not reliable, but it can be helpful. Let's just put it that way. Not bad, but not great either right there. Averaging 1,816 damage, 595 assist, which is pretty high for my heavies and speaks to its mobility, which end game, it's nice to have a heavy that can get around the map. How close were we on this? We got 31% out of 20 battles for the first mark. So that went okay. We were running a crew. We put Goose in there. This is actually a Type-63 crew. I have so many crews at this point and so many extra crew members that I often just build crews for premiums. Whatever, I don't care, sue me. I don't need it for all the other tanks, so we just do that. We end up with a 3 skill crew or 3 perk crew working on the 4th. For the crew setup, it's a commander gunner, which is a little bit odd. And one of the reasons I built a crew out of new crew members here, and these were all, I think, 0 skill crew members. The reason I did that is the new line. So I'll go ahead and train up for the new line a crew like this. I'm expecting at tier 7 or 8, it'll turn into the 4 crew situation like this and be the same, where it's the commander loader, I may have said gunner, commander loader, gunner, driver, radio operator. This is honestly, it's an arse pain setup. I wish Wargaming wouldn't do this kind of thing, but the radio operator is his own person, and the loader has been chucked on the commander, just so we can make sure that the commander has to take a bunch of other skills that are very important. You know, it drives me a little bit crazy, but there you go. They did that to us. I don't remember if this is the same setup as any of the other Japanese tanks, to be honest. I did look at it, Japanese heavies, and the problem, of course, is that you have things like the big boys here that are running around with two loaders, although it looks like there's 1 loader in the Oho and 1. So that doesn't match, right? That's not working. The Oni, not so much, and this tank, not so much. So really, other than if we drop down, I think, to the tier 6, you've got the HT number 6 here, but even that is a different crew. So there's not really a matching crew or tank until that line comes out, and who knows how that will be oriented. In the past, they've done a pretty good job, or in the recent past, they've done a pretty good job of making sure that the crews match, except for maybe some of the lower tier tanks. So we'll have to see how all that pans out, basically. All right. So that's how I did. How is it doing globally? These are early numbers yet, fellas, so we'll just take a quick peek at them. But it's down here. Found it in about the 20th spot or so, maybe even worse. Where is that guy? Type-63. Here he is. So living down here at, I don't know, number 20, number 15 or so. That's an interesting number, that its win rate difference is bad in terms of people are doing worse in it than their win rate is. Early numbers, but we have had people play 27,266 games on NA so far on it, and it's averaging about a 50.62 win rate. So it's certainly not a case of it came into the game just steaming along and crushing things. I wouldn't say it's a bad tank by any means. This is pretty good. It's above some other tanks at the moment that are pretty good. The E75TS, IS-3A, and Peregrine. You know, some of these are still pretty good heavies down here, but I don't think it's challenging the BZ or the Skoda T56 or the 703-2 for the top spot anytime soon. Just a solid tank, really. All right, so there you go. That's my crew. That's my results. My setup real quickly before we go, fellas, is a rammer, of course, bounty, an IA, and bounty hardening. Other options are to throw a turbo on it if you want to zing around a little bit more. Some of the people I've talked to are running it as kind of a medium, as a heavium. You put a turbo on it and it can keep up more or less with the mediums out there. You might think about, if you're looking for something to test, say, the new experimental equipment, the one that I think is useful is the turbo. So if you were going to otherwise put a turbo on this, I might try the experimental turbo, because it also gives you some bonuses for the aiming and such. So you could change your hardening for the turbo. I really like the IA because it just drops that accuracy down like crazy. If we take a look at it, that's giving me a, as I find it here, 0.31 to 0.23, guys. So with an IA, food, brothers in arms, when it cools, I have a gun accuracy of 0.23, which is kind of insane. All right. So the way the game is played, sometimes you have shot, 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 shot. You're in a brawl and you're shooting as soon as you're reloaded. But a lot of times it's a little bit more careful and considered game. You take your shot, you hold down, you come back, you were looking for that shot, and almost, I would say a majority of the time, you probably wait long enough that it cools down anyway. Okay? I don't know if I would necessarily be continually trying to always get the gun cooled. It's not a bad plan depending on your situation, but I wouldn't prioritize that necessarily. You might do it, say, at medium to long ranges. I would look for shots and get them when you could, because honestly, 0.31 is still pretty dang good, even not cooled with my setup right here. So there you go. Let's take a look at some gameplay. All right, first battle here is with Diablo and Platoon. Shout out to Diablo for the help with this tank. Yeah, it certainly helped me get better faster as we discussed how to play it and set it up and all that good stuff. And I do have Goose in here. So I think, oh, that's right, I forgot about this. The phone rang or something like that, and I actually spawned into this and sat here. Which, on Encounter, this is about one of the worst places or worst maps to be AFK early on in a match, because unfortunately they're going to come up and over that hill, and I think I eat a shot before I can really get going on this one. So we'll wait just a moment. Here, let's just fast forward. Here we go. Yes, I did take a shot. The G-Sword got a piece of me. So we're going to come up here with that nice 12 degrees of gun depression, but I'm going to be fighting, as I'm learning about the hydraulics part of it, the gun depression. So I'm like, oh, now did you see it sort of coming down and then pop back up? The hydraulics in the game are difficult to use. You've got to be careful with them, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. This entire game is, or match right here, is me trying to get used to them. Alright, I pinned that turret. Why? Because he gave me a little bit of the side, right? He was pointing off over to the right side just a little bit. You're going to see this quite a bit in the replays or while fighting with this tank. You'll generally bounce another Type-63 if you're looking right at them, even if they're shooting heat. But as soon as you give a little bit of angle and flat plate it, so there's another example of the hydraulics sort of chasing. Got 346 damage. Oh! Close! Again, it looked like it was on there, and then it sort of pops up a little bit. Like, come on, man. Oh, I just can't quite get there. Just can't. I think if I moved off to the left a little bit, it's a slightly better angle. So I'm just about getting it there on the 103. I bounced another one off the Type-63. So there's a great example of a couple bounces on the turret. The turret's not exactly fantastic, but there's a lot of angles on it, and occasionally it can come through for you, basically. We've only got 346 damage, and we're just taking these guys on as best we can, but this is really, this tank's element is a nice hold down spot. And when you start talking about sniping, which is what this thing does really nicely, notice I haven't shot for a long time, so I'm going to have a really nicely accurate gun here. Oh, wow. Yeah, you got to love that, right? Right into that hatch. So for the cooling, notice it's going along. Unfortunately, with the replays, it does not show you the time, but if we go 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, more than likely cooled at this point, right? So now I'm going to have a more accurate gun. We're going to try to come up here and sneak one on this guy's turret. No, don't quite get into the weak spot, into the hatch. The other Concept 1B and the other Type 63 are trying to do the same thing I'm doing, only do it to me. And we're starting to get an advantage up here, so this is looking pretty good. Kind of curious if there's any TDs back there. I haven't really seen them. The SMV CC dies. Now we'll get a shot in his side. There. No, no. Nope, not quite. Moving, dispersion was a little higher. Here we go with the reload. Now, I'm not going to worry about the accuracy now, right? Because I had a shot, and it was a relatively close shot, so there's no reason to go back down the hill and wait the full 14 seconds to get reloaded. We'll do the same thing here. Right? So that's what I'm talking about. If you are working with a closer range thing, a situation where getting a shot off immediately is a good idea. Shot in him. I bounced the T10. Luck right there. Probably just some weird angle that he happened to hit. So I'm showing 1,120 bounce, but honestly, a lot of that's just sort of situational to the shot that was taken. Not necessarily this tank being great in terms of armor. But these weirdly shaped tanks with the oscillating turrets especially, I don't know, you think things like the Charfuture 4, the Cobra, this thing, tanks that have weird angles on them like this, can often be very bouncy in certain situations. Just because of all the weird angles and the way that the game does the bounce mechanics. We're trying to find another shot in here. We were discussing the fact that they're coming up behind us, so I'm going to push around this corner. I don't want to get shot by the MKPZ or the Bat Chat or whatever shows up there. We're trying to track down this TD that's sitting over here. I see the T10. Once we kill this dude, if we can kill him, we've opened up this flank. I can swing around and we'll start working on the T10. There he goes. He's making a runner. Hopefully somebody can kill him. He's actually low now. He's low enough down on the side of the hill. I'm not worried about him because he's gone down there. I'll just push across here. Kind of checking. I am putting myself in a bit of crossfire, and then I find him. He's doing this kind of thing. Do you see the hydraulics sort of shift like that?
There's no points for second place.
There's no points for second place, says Goose. He shoots, we'll come around, load, fire. Again, I'm not going to wait for the cooling to take effect right there. There's no reason to. Get a couple kills, crank it up to 1,700 damage, 282 assist. Now we got to go track down the MKPZ-68 and the Bat Chat. Realize in a situation like this, now I've got that nice accuracy, right? We're traveling somewhere, we've reloaded. It's certainly cooled by now. Well past 4 seconds or so past the reload time. So we're just going to have that nice accuracy at this point. And that ends up being a win. Let's see another example. I lied before we get there. Gun's cooled. End game for the one we were just talking about. I just want you to see the accuracy of this thing. The shell velocity is 1,100, so anytime you're above 1,000, and this one's 150 above 1,000, it's a really comfortable speed for the shell. You don't need a whole bunch of lead fire, and this Bat Chat's moving from left to right pretty quickly. So check this out. I've got the cooled gun because it's been, look at this, how tight that is. We'll just put a little, just a very little bit of lead, and we just thump that guy really nicely. It works out great. He's going to hide right there. Just wanted to show you that. That's what you're getting out of that nice gun cooling. All right, for the second example, we're here on Berlin, bottom tier this time. We're going to go over to the heavy brawl zone. The thing about the heavy brawl zone with heavies is you want one of two things. You want an accurate gun so you can take quick shots and minimize your exposure, or you want some really good armor where you can afford to poke out, aim in a little bit, and take a shot. This has a little bit, or has a lot of the accuracy, depending on if you let the gun cool, and it's got a little bit of the armor. So generally, especially in this case where I'm taking on tier 10s, we're bottom tier, I want to minimize my exposure by taking shots as soon as possible. And what's nice about the cooling part of the gun is that allows that gun to be really accurate, right? So if you have the 14 seconds to wait, so let's just kind of get the timing here. We've moved over here. So 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. We're cooled right about here. So now we've got a really nicely accurate gun. I was able to move around. If I had a shot, I would have taken it, but I didn't. Watch, get the little bounce. Oh, there's that little hydro bounce thing going on right there. It's very annoying, actually, and I need to look into it a little bit more on exactly what I'm doing that makes it do that. But it seems like when the hydraulics engage, it kind of gives a little herky-jerky right there. Trying to go after a pixel. So when the gun's cooled, it's nice because you can minimize the amount of time you're poking out, and you really would like to avoid taking shots back with this tank. Occasionally you'll get that good bounce. Now when I talk about angles, this back angle right here is kind of the way you want to be. So you've nice sloped turret, and also you're on a back angle, so that's going to add a little bit more angle to the turret and give some de facto thickness based on angles and penetration values of the angles. Alright. The other nice thing about this, as we mentioned earlier, it's a relatively maneuverable tank. So I'm able to shift this, although it's not a large shift, some of the larger, more ungainly tanks, it's difficult to get them to shift around. That's unfortunate that I did not penetrate that. I'm wondering if maybe I hit his mantlet there. Some of the larger, more ungainly tanks, it's even hard to shift back and forth in this situation, but you can see that this thing is having no trouble maneuvering in this little tight space, getting from one side to the other, popping up, taking shots, and back down. So it's been long enough, right? Now I've got that nice accurate gun. If I need to pop up, take the shot. You just need to be careful. We're bottom tier, right? So I'm not too interested in continually jousting with a T-30 and a Lurva and the what is it, the 111 thing. I certainly don't want to joust with him too much. Thank goodness he missed that shot. But that was a case of having an accurate gun and knowing I could just pop out, take the shot, and let's just aim in. All right, I didn't wait for it. Didn't need to. Right? 0.31 or whatever it is I had was plenty right there. Get the 60 TP side scraping here. Punish the T-30 just a bit. He thumps the 60 TP. The 60 TP thumps him. Not quite going to get that shot. For a moment, I thought he was going to give me a lower hole, but in order to do that, I've got to come up higher, and I don't really want to chance getting zapped by a BZ-176. Things are looking pretty good over here, actually. We've taken out a T-30. So I'm going to change this position, go past the WZ while he's not really looking. The reason I can do this, or I know I can do this, at least for the moment, is the ship tick has moved across there and proved there's nobody, more than likely, on the other side of the river. So if there was somebody on the other side, on the north side of this map, from the purple side, and that guy died there, right? So the CC-67, you don't want somebody there. You don't want to push over to this position and have to deal with somebody on the river, but he's dead, and it looks like the ship tick's not seeing anybody else. So I'll take a slight chance to come around here and put some pressure on these guys from this side, backed up by the ship tick. This guy's not even looking at him. So we'll come over here and we'll just thump him.
Enemy armor is hit.
And he kind of realized what happened. Now he takes a hit. He's going after me. We'll shoot him. I get lucky.
We just dropped the hammer.
He only tracks me or hits me in the track. Didn't hurt. Now he's in trouble, right? Relatively fast reload. Big hatch on the T-54 Heavy. We'll thump that. Guy dies. Lurva wants to go at me, thinks better of it, and now the Rompel is basically on at this point. We'll come in here and put a shot on his lower plate. He pinned me pretty easily. Our guys are pushing in. It's just the BZ-176. We'll come around here and try to get a shot on this guy. Unfortunately, because I'm using heat and doing a little bit too much zooming in, I'm having a bit of trouble getting into this guy.
Where'd they go?
Get thumped by Artie for 380 whatever damage. Notice the cap, our cap is maybe in danger. I see that spin around, and now you're going to see the relative speed of this thing doing 40 kilometers an hour. It has a pretty good time, or pretty easy time, repositioning. Let's see what speed this thing gets up to. Do we really touch 40? Looks like we do, just a bit. You're always going to shave a little speed off if you shift your hole and turn. Yeah, so we're doing a nice 40 right down the road right here. And that's enough speed to get back and start dealing with these TDs who we are afraid might want to jump onto the cap. Really, if the enemy team had pushed in and put 3 guys on the cap, they may have caused us a lot of trouble. They will eventually attempt to cap, but they're going to be a little late. Both me and Diablo are on the way back here. Diablo. or on the way back here. Pretty even game, actually. I mean, it's looking good for us, but I wouldn't say it's an automatic win. The Foch is cruising along. We'll try to take a shot at him here. Look at that. That's nice. There's that accuracy, right? That gun had been cooled for a while. Down goes the 155. That's very nice. I'm going to lose this little duel, unfortunately. Thump. Can't quite get a shot on him. I'm going to take the opportunity to move across to here while he is reloading. Here comes the other 103. He dies. The Tiger Mouse has come back. And we got this sorted out, right? They killed the 140, and now we're just dealing with this guy. I'm going to shoot through all that and attempt to get lucky, but it doesn't happen. Already thumps him. That's going to slow any reload he has. It's going to make him less accurate. I'm going to try to take a shot here. Oh, that's unfortunate. Of course, I didn't really wait for the reload, right? Or wait for the cooldown. Might have, could have done so in this case and had a better opportunity here. There we go.
Great shot.
We did get a shot out of him. 311, a little bit of a low roll. And down he goes. In fact, that's a lot of bit of... What's the... Hold on. 320, that's right. I'm getting the alpha mixed up between this and the XM66, which is 400. So slight low roll. Not a bad little game. 2,636, 294 assists with no kills on this one, but bottom tier. So being effective in this tank, bottom tier. A lot of stuff going on there. You see the speed of the tank. You see the accuracy in certain cases where you can allow it to cool. It's got plenty of mobility to fight in the heavy zones like that where you're doing the peek and poke stuff. Just a really comfortable all-around tank. So the final word on the Type-63, what would I say? It's a good all-rounder. It is. It's a mobile heavy tank, doesn't have particularly great hull armor. The cooling mechanic gives it an interesting angle that I would say is not overpowered necessarily. Obviously, the better the player you are, the better accuracy will help you, right? Any advantage when you're a good player is going to be multiplied by being a good player. But accuracy, especially in this game, can become overpowered when you start talking about people who can aim precisely, get the shots, going at the right time to the right spot. Obviously, dispersion has a vote, then the RNG in terms of penetration. But if the hand-eye thing is working out and you can have a very accurate gun in game, but also be very accurate in the way you employ it, taking good shots, making good trades, poking when it's smart, angling your armor correctly, aiming at the right spot on the tank, knowing where to aim, all of those things. When you start talking about a gun this accurate and you have those things going for you, it can be an extremely good tank in terms of the firepower and getting shots downrange. Now, it's not a particularly massive alpha. It doesn't have a huge DPM. It has an okay DPM. So that other stuff, those other things kind of keep it from being just completely overpowered. But I think if you like accurate tanks, you're going to like this one. All right? So there you go. That's all I've got. That's the first review for the Christmas tanks. We'll go on to the XM69 5 Force 321, whatever that thing is, next. That is all I've got. Let me know what you think down below, and thanks for supporting the channel. We will see ya.